You're listening to ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio. This episode is brought to you by KingswaySoft. KingswaySoft is a leading integration solution provider offering software solutions that make data integration affordable and painlessly easy. Thousands of enterprise clients from over 80 countries and regions rely on KingswaySoft to integrate data with various business applications in order to drive their business efficiency and fully leverage their information assets. We thank KingswaySoft for sponsoring ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio.
Matthew, welcome to ProdCast. How are you doing this week?
Very good. Excited to be here.
So you sent me an email about some YouTube video you saw about goals. What was that about?
Yeah, so
I'm asking because I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So the video that was sent to me was actually the result of a few conversations I was having over the last couple of weeks. I've been doing some travel. There was a conference that I was at, and I've been chatting with a lot of people about ProdCast and around basically the being able to set yourself up to achieve goals. And one of the topics that I kept coming back to with folks in both kind of personal and professional settings was focusing on just taking a step. So rather than trying to visualize how a whole project will come together, focus on some very small, manageable piece of that. And the TED Talk that was sent over to me after one of those conversations was by Stephen Dunier, I forget how it's pronounced, and it's How to Achieve Your Most Ambitious Goals. And I think he does a fantastic job of kind of taking that and turning it alchemy-like into a collection of examples of kind of how you can do that with seemingly disparate things, and that same process can improve both personally and professionally.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that approach, and I think it applies to many different areas of life. I think career-wise it could apply. It also applies for tasks in your personal life, because a lot of people lose momentum or fall off their goals. Think about, like money. If you have like a big money goal, you want to pay off a big debt, or you want to save up a bunch of money for some purpose, like a down payment on a house or whatever. A lot of people don't reach that goal because they just set themselves the big goal, and then it's a long time to achieve that, where everything I've seen in my personal experience backs it up, that if you can focus on the short wins that lead to the big goal, you are, I will at least, much more likely to stick with it, because you're experiencing that reward throughout the process, not the big reward at the end.
Yeah. And I think that's totally on point. And the example that he uses in the TED Talk, or one of many examples he gives, is relatable even here. I mean, we often talk about reading, kind of having a reading habit, whether it's around education or that kind of thing. But if you look at trying to read more as, I need to read a book a week or something like that, it feels like a very big thing that you have to do. So don't focus on finishing a book a week. Kind of break that down to just making a decision at the end of the day to read one word. Because if you can make that decision that you're going to read one word, a word becomes a sentence becomes a paragraph becomes a chapter. And while you don't have to read the entire book in that sitting, it is that micro decision of choosing to read one word that gets you that momentum moving. And it kind of expands from there into a whole host of different examples.
Right. And I can think of examples this week where I've used that without seeing this TED Talk even.
Yeah.
Where, for example, and we talked about this, the just do something approach to productivity means if you have a document you need to create. And this 2 days ago, I had a document, and I knew it was going to be about an 8 to 10 page document. This is for some internal project at work. And I was procrastinating doing it. I wasn't doing it, and it was kind of an overwhelming thing to me that I knew I had to do this. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to push myself to do this document. I'm going to push myself to create the document, give it a name, create the first page, put the table of contents in there. And by doing that, I felt like, I'm already doing it. And then I wrote the first section. Then I wrote the second section. Before long, the whole thing was done. Yeah. And I see that in my son. I think different personality types are motivated in different ways, but I see my son, and when he has a job to do, such as clean your room, if you tell him clean your room, it's overwhelming to him. He doesn't know where to start. Whereas if you start with a smaller part, start with this part of the room, clean your floor off. Now clean your desk off. Before long, it's done. And so breaking it down is just a logical thing. And then also, sometimes I look at that big task, and I say, I don't have time to do this whole task today. But if I break it down into smaller pieces, I can still, at the end of the day, feel like I accomplished something, like I did something without the full thing being done. And that's one of the things I've had to learn is I love finishing. Some people love starting. I love finishing. I love checking that off, the physical feeling of marking off my list or checking the checkbox on my task list. And it's very unsatisfying for me if I have things linger for multiple days that I just can't close out. So if I break it down, I can be closing those off, crossing them out, whatever I'm going to do. I've been closing those out, crossing them off, whatever I want to do, and still feeling like I'm getting done and making progress to where I go. I think it's the money thing is an interesting topic too, because a lot of people fall off track on their money goals because they get overwhelmed. They feel like I'll never make it, so what's another $200 going to do, or another $10 here, $10 there, and that adds up. Whereas if you keep your goals a little bit smaller, with that lead toward the bigger goal, you'll get a lot farther. Yeah.
Now, a couple of things I thought of as you were chatting there. One is, as you kind of put together or break things down rather into those micro decisions, that's a great opportunity to also look at what can be outsourced versus what you actually have to do yourself. So therein, by having all those small pieces, you may be the person collecting it all, putting it all together in your 10-page document example. You may be responsible for assembling that whole thing, but there may be small pieces that you can delegate out to other folks to be able to pull that together in a way that's much more tactical, much more approachable for both you and the person on the other end that you're coordinating with to do that. So
right.
The other thing that came to mind that your response kind of reemphasized for me, but is something I've thought a lot about since those conversations previously, is there's a balance or a concern with this type of method of, if you don't know quite where you're going or quite what that path looks like, taking a few steps, even albeit small ones, could feel like you're taking steps in the wrong direction. So, being able to help get feedback, help get ideas, help try to figure out what that journey is going to look like, and having some sort of frame of reference is still important. It's just, don't get bogged down in how big it is. Rather, use that as the thing to act as a compass, right?
Right. It's kind of like the agile approach to life. Constantly iterate, constantly get feedback, constantly reassess where you're going. And that way you can make sure. But if you break your big task down into smaller chunks and get one or two done and figure out this isn't really what I expected, or I'm not getting value from this, it's easier to change course at that point than it is if you're waiting till the whole thing is done too.
Yeah. And, if you're anything like Stephen, who did the TED Talk, you too can hold a Guinness Book of World Record, official record. And in his case, it is for the largest crocheted granny square in the world. So that's pretty exciting. The funny thing, he doesn't even really like knitting.
But he just wanted to have his name in the Guinness Book of World Records.
It was so I think he said it was his wife that suggested to him that he try knitting, because he had worked on so many other more daredevilish type of things. Okay, you've done enough of these high risk things. Pick up knitting.
You could always poke your fingers or something. But interesting thing I learned is that Guinness Book of World Records has all these categories for these daredevil type things, like the longest free fall without a parachute. they no longer have one for the longest time without sleep because they felt it was too dangerous.
That one's too dangerous, not the longest free fall without a parachute. Got it.
Yeah, so that tells you something. So
I mean, sleep is really important. So the more you know, kids, the more you know.
So I've had a theme in recent books and other things that I've read recently, and I didn't really plan it to be. This was just kind of one of these serendipitous things where a series of things kind of came together that kind of all kind of reinforced themselves. So sure. 2 weeks ago, I actually deleted my Facebook account. I just had enough, and I found that it was taking too much of my time, and I was get done using it and feel like, what have I done with this time? It was bringing out sides of my personality that I didn't really like myself, like the snarky side or the side that was, I think, seeking approval of other people and trying to get as many likes as I could. And I just thought, this is crazy. So in the process, I discovered a couple of interesting books. One is Reclaiming Conversation by Sherry Turkle, who's an MIT professor, and she has talked about technology and its impact on culture for like 25 years. Has written books, very kind of scholarly books. But this one is all about how the modern connection culture loses the ability to have conversations, and looking at things like kids these days, but people growing up now have kind of a phobia of talking on the phone. They'd rather type the message out as a text message, make sure that it's perfect, and then send it, and they feel very awkward having those one-on-one conversations. The other book that I thought that actually references Sherry Turkle's book, which I read this one after I read Sherry Turkle's book, but just coincidentally it referenced it, is Cal Newport's new book called Digital Minimalism. And you remember Cal Newport, author of Deep Work. Mm-hmm. This is kind of like a follow-up applying that to personal life. And he says in the book he got a lot of feedback from people who said, this is great. I need to know, how do I get control over these distractions in my personal life? And the thing I found, several things I found interesting about Cal's new book, but one is, he, as well as the Sherry Turkle book and 2 or 3 other books I read, talk a lot about how the science behind attention, and how basically there's thousands of scientists working for social media companies whose sole aim is to increase our use of the platforms. And by introducing things like likes and other things like that, they activate the same part of the brain as like a slot machine does, which I think we've referred to that before. But I found that to be true, and it was kind of like I realized that I was in some ways shaping the way that I would say things or the things I would talk about based on how they would play on Facebook. I didn't feel like I was almost like I was lying to myself and trying to play a role rather than be who I am. And it just wasn't filling. And plus, my kids are getting to the age where they want to do this, and I will get on them from time to time because it seems like they just get engrossed by devices. But I can't, with integrity, tell them you shouldn't be on your phone all day when I'm on my phone all day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just found that other channels like LinkedIn and even Twitter, I can control. I can go 3 days without checking Twitter, and LinkedIn I share things on and occasionally look at, but I don't have that same obsessive pull for some reason with these other channels.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, and might I say, congrats on your decision to make a very decisive change around those. If you're not liking how social media is hitting you that way, it's a big step. I still have a Facebook account, though it may as well not be there for most cases because, as I think you've pointed out before, I never post on Facebook and not very active there, but it is a communication means that I've kept open for invitations and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But
and I think that's smart, and that kind of backs up, that kind of usage pattern kind of backs up what Cal talks about in Digital Minimalism, where he says if you have to be on the service, or you have things you find useful like discussion groups or business reasons you need to be on there, do certain things to control the negative parts of it. He says never like anything and never comment on anything, because the likes and the comments are what drives this obsessive behavior, because then you get the likes, and that's also the mechanism by which they build the profile, which is kind of funny because apparently, I am a very diverse person, because I downloaded the data file at Facebook Academy was 1.5 gigabytes.
Oh, wow.
That's gigabytes. And it's one of the files in there is their advertiser profile. So based on your likes and what your behavior, they build a profile of terms. And I had Republican Party, I had Democrat Party, I had rappers and Josh Groban in there. So again, I don't know this big data. I don't know how precise of an image they have of me or what, but when you like something, that's driving their revenue, because by liking something, that helps them advertise back to you. But there's also an aspect of a contentment aspect of it too, where if you see all your friends on Facebook, they're all posting the good stuff, the stuff that makes them look best, which I was doing as well. And by doing that, multiple studies have found that people who have higher interaction with Facebook spend more money, because you feel like my house is not as nice, or my vacation where I'm just going hiking isn't as nice as somebody going to a resort. I need to spend more on it. Or everybody's having these certain kind of trays at their dinner parties, so instead of having people over for cheese and crackers, I get the fancy meat and cheese. Those types of things. So that's the kind of thing where I kind of felt like in some ways it's manipulating, or it's kind of a weird science experiment in behavior modification.
Yeah, well,
if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I've long toyed with the idea of doing a series of videos and getting more active with some of the stuff that I record audio only, or I'll do a screencast, but actually projecting myself through video. And one of the active thoughts that I've had is I need to have like a different T-shirt that I'm wearing in every single video, because that's just what YouTubers do, right? They have to have some new funny quippy thing. Actually, though, there is one, and this is probably not productive, but there's a guy who does how to play various board games that is completely farcical. He makes up just these off-the-wall rules that align to the pieces that are contained in the game, and he wears the exact same shirt in every video. The shirt says, "Cards, deal with it." So a very, very light pun there. And anyone who's curious, it's called The Dragon's Tomb is the name of that channel.
Okay.
But back to a couple of the things you brought up in those books. For Reclaiming Conversation, it reminds me of, there was a recent episode of the Tim Ferriss Show podcast with guest host Katarina Fake, who has been involved in a whole bunch of different internet properties. And one of them was Flickr, actually. That was one of the early ones she was involved with. And it was funny because she was talking about the shift in things of kind of these online spaces to be able to get together and have conversations. And back when they were first being pioneered, they were online communities and places theoretically for people to get together and talk about things around a topic or a subject or a shared interest, something like that. And the shift from being an online community into being more of a media platform or a social media platform has really changed the packaging of you as a user of that. I mean, you are truly the product being sold rather than the person who is benefiting the most from those. It was an interesting conversation that she'd had.
Yeah, definitely. So some interesting things that's happened that I've noticed in the last week or two since I deleted my Facebook account that were kind of surprising to me. One is my phone screen time app says I spent 40% less time on my phone last week than the week before. That's one. Second thing is I feel like I'm actually getting most of my work done during work hours. I've had less spillover into other parts, just showing kind of the chain reaction here that
it's not separate segments of time. Everything kind of blends together, and where I have had my attention taken away and my focus broken during work hours, I've had to make up for it outside of work hours. And the third one that I didn't expect at all is I kind of feel like I've rediscovered the web. There were several websites that I had used to on a regular basis check them out that I'd forgotten about because I kind of made the walled garden of Facebook kind of my hub, if that makes sense, where now I'm just remembering these places and they're still there and they're still relevant, but I'm not driven to check them constantly. So I feel like the time that I do spend on the web is richer and kind of going back to what I liked about the internet previous to Facebook.
Are you calling Facebook like a concierge that you don't like the experience you're getting?
It's the new America Online. It's the new training wheels for the web, basically.
So, couple things. I'll start with a very straightforward question. Are you a net promoter of digital minimalism? Should I go out and read that one?
I didn't feel like he was necessarily anti-technology, and he's never had a social media account. You can't find him on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, so it might be weird for somebody like that to write about it. But he suggests a digital detox, which is if you feel if you're investing too much of your time and focus in these services, he suggests cut out every unnecessary service that you use for 30 days. Not things like microwaves and cars and things like that, but online services, even like video games, if that's a problem for you, and then go 30 days and replace them with real world hobbies and higher grade leisure activities. And so that way you're not just taking something out, you're replacing it with something, and then come back and strategically add these things in where they add value. So again, I don't know if I'm necessarily doing that. I had already deleted Facebook, so I don't know that I'm doing that. I have rethought some of my ongoing subscriptions to things like music services and streaming video services like Netflix, where you've got like the repeating subscription. My Wall Street Journal online subscription. What I thought about is, I can always come back to them if I miss them. So if I cancel that, and B, a lot of these services just renew and I never use them, and $10 here, $10 there adds up to sometimes $100 to $200 a month. So my new strategy is cancel all the services every month, and then when they run out, if I miss it, I can always reactivate my account.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I don't know if it's just a stars aligning or there's more to it, but I ended my Netflix subscription literally 2 weeks ago. I made a similar decision. I can always come back and re-binge on the stuff that I actually care about, but I wasn't getting enough total value out of it. I'm also trying to de-prime my life, so I'm not renewing Prime, which is up here at the end of this week. And, again, it's just content that I'm not necessarily using, and I find that I end up buying more stuff online through Prime because, I can just have it show up in a couple of days, and it's really easy that way. But is the benefit really there, or am I just spending on stuff that I wouldn't normally do?
I was tempted to do that. I added up the kind of non-impulse buys that I've done through Amazon, and what the shipping would have been, average like $4 per package. It still is in my favor to keep that one. But as far as you can go to Amazon, Apple, or Google Play and go to the subscription center for each of them and see all your apps that are set to renew automatically, and just set them not to renew. And then if you come to a day where it just doesn't work because it ran out, you can always do it. But I like that intentionality, and that's what I'm not turning anti-technology. I may work with technology. What I'm saying is being more intentional about technology, because it's so easy to get into the hype and the positive sides of technology and say they're neutral. You only see the benefits, but you don't think about what am I giving up for this? What's the cost? Not just money, but time. Is this the best way to get this benefit as well? So in the book, Cal talks about kind of doing a profit loss statement for each
service or app that you use, and saying, okay, what's the benefit I get from it? What am I giving up by doing this? And is this the best way to do this?
Cool. So is it? Give me the balance of it. Is it more of a here do these things, or is it here are the upsides and downsides of doing different? Like what's the nature of the book in that way, if that makes sense?
The nature of the book is talking about kind of what there's about both the positive things and negative things about technology, and kind of the shift that's happened after the like button was introduced by Facebook. Because before then it was basically online communities and things like that, advertiser driven. But after the invent of the like button, that was when it turned into more of this attention economy of driving, trying to drive usage and finding ways to massively increase usage. That's when the usage has ballooned from what it was before.
Got it.
And it's just, again, the message is just saying be intentional about the way that you use technology.
Yeah. Well, and to tie it back to the first topic we discussed, it comes from a bunch of little micro decisions of, are you flipping that on to scroll through the Facebook feed, hit that like button, or as it was originally envisioned, they were going to call it an awesome button. I don't know how the branding of that changed its use, but that's very, very intriguing.
And it was kind of a wake-up call when I was on a recent family vacation. My first thought was, I need to share a picture of this on Facebook rather than I need to enjoy this with my kids. That's when I knew it was just was a little bit too much and was shaping my personality in ways that I didn't like. So forcing myself to not look at my phone and take pictures, but take pictures solely for the purpose of keeping that memory rather than doing it to present an image of, I'm cool, I'm having so much fun here.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think the studies show that you actually remember stuff better if you don't take a picture. So,
right. It's kind of, I look around at school programs, and I've been the guy holding the camera up. I've never been the guy holding the big iPad up and taking video. That guy's terrible. But anyway, so I'm thinking, when have I gone back and just rewatched a video from my kids' Christmas program? Probably once. I don't generally go back and watch that. And sure, maybe when they're 30 years old and I'm 90 or whatever, maybe I'll go back and look at that. But and no, I'm not going to be 90 when they're 30. But anyway, but that's the thing, is just enjoy it more. Still take pictures and videos where it makes sense, but do it more. And I think you mentioned Flickr. Flickr is a great example, where Flickr before Facebook or before Instagram was kind of the place for people to store their massive photo collections. And so there's a lot of people that uploaded all their pictures there and actually didn't keep local copies. As of 2 weeks ago, Flickr is now owned by, I think, PhotoBucket. You have to pay them or you're going to lose your pictures. Yep. And that just shows you kind of like what Amazon did with their music locker service. Any free service is not ultimately free, and there's no guarantee that it will be there. So I don't want to trust a free service like Facebook to be the keeper of my memories. Yep.
Couldn't agree more.
Because there will come a day where they could be gone, or they could be charged for, or even if they're not, the fact that they're used to gather information.
Let's not just assume that because there's a free service, it's going to be wonderful and amazing and perfect for all the things forever into the future.
Right.
Just kind of be aware of the fact that there is a product there. It can be used for good, and it can also be used for bad. And you have to kind of always be learning and investing time to understand what data is where, how it's being used, and in these days, I certainly put a premium on I'll pay for a service that gives me more privacy. I'll pay for a service that gives me more control over that. It also makes me feel like the likelihood that my information is just going to get sold off is much less.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. Just being intentional. And the reality is, if people want to get in touch with me, it's no secret how to find me. So, I've found it hasn't really hampered my connectivity. And if there are people that the only way that somebody will talk to you is via Facebook, like your second grade teacher or whatever, chances are you're not really that connected to them anyway. This has been ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio with Matthew C. Anderson and Joel Lindstrom. Follow Matthew on Twitter at MCAnderson or on his blog, connectingthedata.com. Follow Joel Lindstrom on Twitter at Joel Lindstrom. ProdCast and the rest of the CRM Audio Network are available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and anywhere else fine podcasts are available. This podcast is a production of Dynamic Podcasts, LLC.